सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्. We have been relishing the Gita by taking up the summaries of the chapters of the Gita. Today we have assembled here to relish chapter 3 of the Gita, titled Karma Yoga. Chapter 2 of the Gita is called Sankhya Yoga, where Krishna dealt with the twin topics of Sankhya and Yoga. The topic of Sankhya, which deals with knowledge of the Atman, and the topic of Yoga, where Krishna introduces Karma Yoga. So, having introduced Karma Yoga in the second chapter, Krishna then goes on to spend considerable amount of time in the third chapter detailing the intricacies of Karma Yoga. So, as this chapter focuses on explaining the principle of Karma Yoga, it is appropriately titled Karma Yoga. What is Karma Yoga? If we have to put it in simple words, Karma Yoga is leading our lives based on right knowledge, right attitude, and right action. Karma Yoga is about doing right actions. Of course, the big question is, what are right actions? How do we know what is right action? Any action that I do, there is always some benefit for me in that action. This is the way we lead our lives. Now, if we have to improve the quality of our actions, we need to see how there can be some benefit out of this action to more people. If there is a benefit to some others out of the action that I perform, then the quality of the action is better. The quality of the action starts improving when the number of beneficiaries of my action improves. How do I know my action is truly of the right quality? When the number of beneficiaries of my action keep increasing. Every time I do an action, if the number of people who benefit out of that action increases, then I am performing Karma Yoga, or I am in the process of performing Karma Yoga. If any action that I perform, I am the only beneficiary, then I am only doing selfish actions. To perform Karma Yoga, right knowledge becomes foundational. Without right knowledge, without jnana, without the foundation of jnana, the knowledge of reality and understanding of my own true nature, the knowledge of the Atman, without this foundational knowledge, I cannot perform right actions. This is what we saw in the second chapter, where if I do not know my true identity, then I will not be able to perform right actions. Knowing the nature of the world, realizing that this world is a manifestation of Bhagavan, changes our perspective completely. When we look at the world as Bhagavan's manifestation, then everything in this world becomes sacred. Every part of this world becomes so very sacred. And everything, every resource that we use becomes Krishna Prasada. Every action that we do, we need resources, including our own body, mind, and intellect. And when we see every resource in this world as Krishna's gifts to us, that perspective changes the quality, the attitude of the actions that we perform. And when we realize this fact, we also see that every experience has Krishna's signature in it. Every event that unfolds has his signature, and every experience by default becomes Krishna Prasada. Therefore, before dealing with Karma Yoga, Krishna addresses the topic of the nature of our own identities through Sankhya Yoga. And therefore, in the third chapter, Krishna begins to clarify Arjuna's fundamental doubts. Arjuna started asking the most important question: what is the right thing to do? In that process, Krishna explained to him the nature of the Atman and the nature of right action. And in that process, Krishna also talked about two paths that are available to sadhakas: the path of Karma Yoga and the path of Jnana Yoga. And Arjuna became confused. So therefore, as we begin the third chapter, we start once again with Arjuna in a confused state. Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardhana tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. Arjuna is now confused. Towards the end of second chapter, Krishna talks at length about Shanti. In the process of explaining the characteristics of a Sthita Prajna, Krishna talks at length. Sashaknoti adhigacchati, sashanti mapnoti nakamakami. Now, Arjuna, who was already inclined not to fight the war, gets this opportunity to zero in on that one word that Krishna speaks, Shanti. Arjuna was looking for an excuse. He was trying to find an excuse not to engage in the war. So the moment Krishna talks about Shanti, immediately Arjuna zeroes in on that particular word and says, hey Krishna, on the one hand, you talk about Shanti. On the other hand, you are prescribing that I should engage in this war. This seems to be very conflicting, seems to be very contradictory. Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardhana tatkim karmani ghore mam niyojayasi keshava. Why are you asking me to engage in this war which is ghora? This is ghora karma. Why are you asking me to engage in this? Arjuna did not understand that Krishna was talking about Shanti, peace, but he was talking about inner Shanti, inner peace, not outer peace. Krishna's instructions were very clear. His instructions were for Arjuna to fight the war externally and to find peace internally. And therefore, there is no contradiction between these two instructions. Instruction number 1 is to fight the war externally, and instruction number 2 is to find peace internally. And these two instructions have no contradiction whatsoever. Arjuna was confused. He did not understand this. And therefore, he says, hey Krishna, I want to know for sure. Yamishredeva vakyena buddhirmohayasi vame tadevam vadanishchitya yena shreyoham apmiyan. Shreya means supreme good. You please instruct to me. Now I am confused. On the one hand, you seem to be talking about renunciation. On the other hand, you seem to be talking about engaging in war. You're talking about peace, you're talking about war. I'm completely confused. Please instruct. What is that supreme good? Yena shreyoham apnuyam. That is where then Krishna categorically declares, hey Arjuna, there are two paths available to the sadhakas. There are two paths available. There is a path of renunciation, disengagement from this world. And there is a path of detached action, engagement with this world. Now, depending on the qualification, the prerequisites that one has, one can choose one of these paths. But to you, hey Arjuna, the path of detached action is what I recommend. So this is the beauty of the Gita. The Gita, nowhere in the Gita, there is a recommendation that we should renounce the world, walk away from this world. Renunciation, tyaga, sannyasa gets a completely new definition in the Gita. Now, as we go deeper in the Gita, we understand the rich purport of what true sannyasa means, karma sannyasa. This is where Krishna says, hey Arjuna, it is almost impossible for majority of people to disengage from this world. We need to necessarily engage with this world. And it is in the process of engagement, by engaging with this world, by doing actions, by doing materialistic actions, we can still progress spiritually. This is where Krishna reconciles the seemingly opposing views. We all think there are two contrasting styles of living. One is an ascetic way of life and living, where I completely do away with all my desires. I retire from life and living. No, I go to Rishikesh. Enough is enough. This is an ascetic way of living. Now, there is another way of living which is chasing various goals in life, staying engaged with this world. This is a way of living based on action, very active way of life and living. Now, on the face of it, these two ways of life and living seem to be conflicting. We may say, either you can choose to be an ascetic or you can choose to be a man of action. Krishna says, you don't need to make a choice between the two. You can reconcile both. Through Karma Yoga, the principle of Karma Yoga, Krishna reconciles both these seemingly conflicting way of life and living. And he says, you can engage with this world. You can transmute every action that you do. Action by default is binding in nature, but you can transmute the same action to become liberating in nature. This is where Krishna gives us practical solutions through the principle of Karma Yoga. It is like alchemy. In good old days, alchemy used to be practiced where alchemists were known to transmute base metal into gold. The process of alchemy is transmuting any base metal into gold. Now, Karma Yoga is like alchemy of action, where you take mundane actions, normal actions, day-to-day actions that we perform. We don't need to change our actions to perform Karma Yoga. It seems a man approached Swamiji and said, Swamiji, before enlightenment, what were you doing? Swamiji said, no, the Swamiji was living on the outskirts of a forest. a small ashrama. Swamiji said, before enlightenment, I used to wake up early in the morning, do my morning ablutions, pray for a while, then go to the forest, fetch wood, come back home, come back to the ashram, teach, pray, have my lunch, rest for a while, then continue with satsang, do more swadhyaya, study, and then retire. This used to be my daily routine. Then this disciple very curiously then asked, Swamiji, after enlightenment, what do you do now? Well, I wake up in the morning, after my morning ablutions, I do prayer, I go to the forest, I fetch wood, I come back, and then I pray, and then I teach, I have lunch, and then I do once again swadhyaya, I have satsang, I retire. The disciple was very, very confused. There seemed to be no change in the daily routine of the Swamiji. So what did enlightenment really do? He had a very blank face. The Swamiji understood. He said, oh, my dear young man, it is not about changing the actions that you do. It is bringing about a qualitative shift to the attitude that drives your actions. Karma Yoga is not about changing our actions. We can be doing any kind of actions, whatever stage of life we are in, young or old, wherever we are. It is bringing that qualitative shift. No, this is that alchemy of action. Karma Yoga is alchemy of action. Transmuting actions that are binding by nature into liberating actions. The same action can become liberating. So basically Krishna says, so therefore, hey Arjuna, therefore I recommend that you do not need to worry about renouncing the world. You do not need to worry about this conflict between Jnana Yoga or Karma Yoga. Both lead to the same goal of Atma Sakshatkara. Even by performing Karma Yoga, the end goal of realizing your true identity, realizing your true nature, reaching that state of self-realization, Atma Sakshatkara, is possible by performing Karma Yoga. And Krishna also adds, hey Arjuna, you must also know, you may think one can renounce actions. In reality, it is impossible. Akarmana manarambham naishkarmyam purushoshnute nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadigacchati. No, naishkarmya, what a beautiful word that Krishna uses. Karmya, naishkarmya, a state of actionlessness. Krishna says, by non-performance of actions, you cannot reach a state of actionlessness. You may be confused. Actionlessness means we may interpret naishkarmya, actionlessness, as a state where there is no karma, no action. And therefore, how can we reach a state of actionlessness? By performing actions. Isn't it logical? It is through non-performance of actions we reach a state of actionlessness. Krishna says this is where we need to understand the word karma a little bit more. Karma is action. Karma is also reaction. Every action has a reaction. By design, every action has a reaction. Which means any action that we perform, mental and physical. Karma covers not just physical actions, even mental actions. I may say that I am not doing any action, I am sitting still. But I may be more active because I am processing thousands of thoughts in my mind. That is also karma. Now, action is karma, reaction, the consequence is also karma. So when Krishna says naishkarmya, we have to understand it as not actionless state, we have to understand it as a reactionless state. A state where there are no reactions to my actions, which means I perform actions rooted in the knowledge of my true self, knowledge of the Atman, which will not be binding in nature. So he says, it is impossible here, Arjuna, even if you want to not perform actions for human beings, it is impossible. I can shut myself in a room, close all the doors, all the windows, and say, I will not engage with this world, I will not do any actions. I can tie myself up, because my organs of actions, I will tie them up. I will become immobile and stay in one place. I may become more tired, not doing any physical action, because I will still end up. That is why he said, Nakarmana manarambham naishkarmyam purushoshnute. Not by non-performance of actions, you cannot reach that state of reactionlessness. It also, you cannot become content. Siddhi, success, contentment cannot be achieved by refusing to do your actions, refusing to do your duties. Essentially, walking away from life is not the answer to find contentment, satisfaction, and meaning. Krishna says this can be only found by staying engaged with the world. Continue to perform actions, but a formula is required to perform right actions which will take us to that state of Naishkarmya. What is that formula? Immediately we want to know. Hey Krishna, you want us to continue to perform actions. You are also assuring us that when I perform these actions in a certain way, it will take me to a reactionless state, which means the actions will become liberating and not binding. How do I do that? What is the art of excellence? We all want to know. We want our life to be led based on excellence. We all have passion for excellence. We say, what is true excellence? So Krishna explains. He gives some fundamental guidelines. Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabate Arjuna karmendriyaihi karma yogam asaktas savisishyate. Asaktaha sa visishyate. Visishyate, excellence. Who does not want to do excellent actions? We all want to excel in whatever we do, isn't it? We all aim, aspire to do excellent actions. And what is that art of excellence, we may ask? Krishna is giving us the guidelines here so that we can practice the art of excellence. Yastvindriyani manasa niyam yarabhate Arjuna niyamya. Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate. Guideline 1. Karmendriyaihi karma yogam. Guideline number 2. Asaktaha. Guideline number 3. Krishna says the indriyas by design are unruly in nature. The indriyas, when he says indriyas, are our sense organs. Our sense organs by design are always pointed outwards, are always engaging with the world, are always interacting with the world. We don't need to give instructions to our eyes to specifically see something. If something is presented in front of us, the eyes will automatically interact with the object. Any sound that comes, automatically our ears interact with the sound, process, bring the sound. Any stimuli from the external world, the indriyas faithfully, dutifully capture and bring inside. Now, we are all slaves to our own senses, whether we realize and acknowledge or not. And especially in today's world. In today's world, all the marketeers in the outside world all know our weaknesses. They know how to capture us. How? By capturing our indriyas. Our indriyas by nature are weak. If the indriyas are not regulated, if our indriyas are not monitored, if they are not managed, they can be very unruly and we tend to become slaves. We don't like the word to be a slave. We don't want to be slaves to anyone. We don't want to be servants to anyone. What? We are all servants to our own indriyas. We are all slaves to our own indriyas. The only way to reverse the equation is to start regulating the indriyas and we becoming the masters. We have to change the hierarchy. So guideline number 1, performing right actions in order to practice excellence in the art of right actions is to realize that we need to take charge of our sense organs. We need to regulate, monitor, manage and master. How do we do that? With our mind. Yastvindriyani manasa. That is the function of the mind. Mind is like the supervisor in the factory of life. All the indriyas are workers. If there is no supervisor in the factory, the workers will have a field day. The mind needs to take charge. With the help of the mind, we have to regulate the workers in the factory of life so that we can manage our life and living based on right actions. Yastvindriyani manasa niyam yarabhaterjuna karmendriyehi karma yogam asaktah savisishyate. The second guideline Krishna talks about is karmendriyehi karma yogam. Now we briefly discuss karma yoga in the second chapter. Karma yoga is rooted in the art of giving. In any action, if we give more than we take, that action becomes karma yoga. Karma yoga is built on the foundation of contributory selfless work. Any work that we do becomes a duty. We normally use the word duty for any work that we do. But our Shastras say a work becomes a duty because duty means it is ordained. Any work becomes a duty when it becomes contributory in nature. When a work is contributory and selfless, it becomes a duty. When we give more than we take, the principle of giving more, becoming contributors, net contributors. Now we are all both contributors and consumers, but if we really reflect on our way of life and living, we are net consumers. We consume more than we contribute. And our education system also teaches us to consume more, to have more, to get more, to acquire more, to possess more. And in that process, the focus is all about one way of taking. We forget giving. Life is based on the cycle of giving and taking. If we stop it, if we stop the giving and only keep taking, it's like a cell in the body becoming cancerous. Selfishness, greed is a cancer. And Krishna says, karmendriyehi karma yoga. When we talk about karma yoga, there is an action that we do for outer benefit, but more important than outer benefit is the inner benefit. Karma yoga is about performing an action where by doing that action, we are actually gaining something internally. We are progressing internally. What is that internal gain? In any action that we do, there is a possibility for an internal gain. So this is what is called chitta shuddhi, making the mind purer. Every action that we do has to make the mind more pure. When an action is selfish in nature, it makes the mind more impure. In our regular accounting, I don't know, some of you may be here accountants, chartered accountants. I don't need to tell you, when we in accounting, when we say what is a profit, We say when we take more than we give, we make a profit. This is material accounting. Whereas in spiritual accounting, we make a profit when we give more than we take. When we give more than we take, in spiritual accounting, we make a profit, and that profit is called Chitta Shuddhi, purity of the mind. So Krishna here is saying Karmendriyahi Karma Yogam, performing contributory selfless work, where by doing mundane actions, we are ensuring that our mind also remains calm, remains pure, and we also grow internally. Our consciousness, internal growth is about our consciousness rising from the level of material reality to the level of spiritual reality. Otherwise, we remain trapped. We remain trapped at the material level. So by performing right actions, we can also elevate our consciousness. Karmendriyehi karma yogam. Asaktaha. This is guideline 3. Asaktaha. Saktaha means attached. Asaktaha means detached. Being detached from the result of the work. This is what Krishna defines karma yoga. The famous karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. No, there Krishna very clearly explains. So therefore, the third guideline is asaktaha, detached action. Asakta savisishyate. These three guidelines, when they are put together and practiced, Krishna says, then one can excel in everything that one does. Immediately, Arjuna has a very valid question, like all of us. Now, action by design, we all know that when we do an action, there is a consequence. This is the law of karma. The law of karma is very simple. For every action, there is a result. For every action, there is a consequence. We cannot escape from the consequences. There has to be a result. There has to be a reaction. And that result, that reaction is binding in nature. This is what binds us to samsara. Now, if that is the case, then you recommend that we continue to perform right actions. In what way can we escape this bondage of samsara? How can the consequence not bind us? What is that formula? That is where Krishna gives a very profound formula. That profound formula Krishna calls yajna. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartam karma konteya mukta sangas samachara. This principle of yajna is so very profound. So we all possibly have heard of the term yajna used in the Vedic parlance. When we in the Vedas, in the Karma Kanda of the Vedas, when we use the term yajna, immediately the imagery of performing the fire sacrifice come to our minds. We are all used to the ritual of the fire sacrifice, where we offer the various oblations are offered to the fire, and through these oblations we please various devatas. This ritual of yajna is very, very popular through the Karma Kanda. Now Krishna now says you have to perform action. Every action has to become a yajna, he says. Yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. Unless and otherwise you perform an action based on the principle of yajna, that action will remain. That action will only bind you. When you perform an action based on the principle of yajna, hey Arjuna, the same action will become liberating in nature. So therefore, the answer to the question, what is that which will make my action liberating in nature? The same action that I do, how can I transform it into liberating action? How can I raise the level of my consciousness and perform an action which becomes liberating in nature? Krishna gives the formula, yajna. Again, what is yajna? If we have to simply understand the principle of yajna, there are several dimensions to this terminology of yajna. Yajna is sacrifice, no doubt, but yajna is sacrificing self-interest for the sake of larger good. This is one simpler way of defining the principle of yajna. Yajna is sacrificing our ego in the fire of knowledge. If we have to take the same imagery of the ritual of yajna, there is a fire and there is an oblation that is being offered. Now, visualizing the same Vedic ritual of yajna, we can also understand how every action can become an yajna. When the ego is sacrificed, the ego becomes the oblation in the fire of knowledge, that action becomes a yajna. When my selfish interest is sacrificed for the sake of larger interest, that action becomes a yajna. We may or may not realize this. Trading what is immediate for the future is a defining characteristic of human beings. Let me repeat this. The defining characteristic of any human being, this is what is special about human beings. So animals, all living beings, primarily do 4 things: eat, sleep, procreate, protect. This is what all living beings do. Human beings also do the 4, but human beings become human beings only when they go beyond these 4. Because we alone are capable of doing something more than eating, sleeping, procreating, and protecting. Why? Because all the other living species are driven by the bodily impulses. They are programmed by their bodily impulses. And they just behave exactly as per the program that is given to them. Every living species has a program written. This is how the species will act, will live and die. Human beings alone we have been given this unique capability to reprogram, change, regulate our bodily impulses. We don't need to necessarily succumb to our bodily impulses. We have been given special faculties where we can rise above our bodily impulses and we can do something beyond what all other living beings do. This is what I call trading the immediate for something future. And every human endeavor, successful human endeavor, which raised human beings way above and beyond the animal kingdom, is because of this unique ability to trade immediate gratification for something good in the future. So this is what the Shastras call preyas shreyas. Short-term want, long-term gain. This is a very unique characteristic, unique endowment, a very special faculty that we all have. Many a times we may not recognize that unique gift that we have, the ability to trade, because otherwise we are all driven by the need for immediate gratification. More so in today's digital world, everything has to happen within a minute. I click a button, I need to get the answer. Everything, enlightenment also has to happen in 2 minutes, otherwise no time. Immediate gratification. Sages have spent hundreds of years for enlightenment, and we want answers to every question that we may have in this planet, under the sun, everything within 2 minutes. Swamiji, you explain the Gita in 2 minutes, we will listen to you. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Very difficult. Immediate gratification. This modern day, the digital world has taken us to the extreme, wanting this immediate. But the defining characteristic of humans is to trade this need for immediate gratification for some future good. All the scientific advancements have really happened because of this unique endowment. Every advancement. Newton was contemplating and he saw an apple fall from the tree. If it was a monkey which saw, it would have just gone there, picked up the apple nicely and would have relished the apple. Luckily, it was not a monkey, it was Newton who saw. And even though Newton was hungry, He traded the immediate gratification to fulfill his hunger for a future gratification of discovering the nature of reality, physical reality. That is why there was a transformation in the outer world. Krishna says the same transformation in the outer world can also be brought in the inner world. This yajna is trading the need for immediate gratification for a future good by raising us from our attachment to material reality. Our consciousness is trapped at the level of material reality. Elevating it to spiritual reality is possible. It is not difficult at all by following the principle of yajna. Sacrifice our selfish interest for a larger good. No, this larger good need not be very large to begin with. We all are parts of a whole. Now, Krishna, the beauty of third chapter is Krishna talks about how this whole world, this whole universe, this creation is based on the principle of yajna, he says. Sahayajna prajasrishtva purovacha prajapatihi anena prashavidyatvam yeshavostishta kamadhati. He says, this whole creation, I created this universe, hey Arjuna, based on this principle of yajna. What is this principle of yajna? Another dimension of yajna is the law of abundance. If you look at nature, nature teaches us how it is based on the law of abundance. Nature works on the principle of enough and not more, whereas we work on the principle of more and not enough. Nature works on the principle of enough and not more. There is no waste in nature. If you really look at nature, it works on the law of interdependence. Now, everything in this creation is interconnected, interdependent. Now, all of us, whether we realize or not, we are all interdependent. We are all interconnected. As I speak and as you listen, we are all consuming gallons of oxygen coming from our plant kingdom. And we are giving back gallons of carbon dioxide, which the plants love, really. We are all interconnected. This whole earth is a living system, one living system. Every part, we can look at this living system as an organic whole, whole with a W, not H, W-H-O-L-E. Organic whole, indivisible, interconnected, integrated, interdependent, organic whole, where every part is connected. And for harmony to exist, every part in this whole has to align with the whole, has to contribute to the harmony. If you look at nature, if you look at all, in this living system of earth, there are several ecosystems. There is a marine ecosystem, there is a freshwater ecosystem, there is a terrestrial ecosystem. So every ecosystem is also an organic whole, is also an example for interdependence. We all know ecosystems. We don't study ecosystems. We all live in our own ecosystems, network of egos. Krishna gives examples of ecosystems, which are where examples of interdependence. So look at the animal kingdom. No, animals, yes, they kill, but then they kill only when they are hungry, not to decorate their rooms. Look at the ocean living system, 3 times bigger than the living system on the earth. The ocean, the marine ocean system is 3 times bigger, and there is perfect harmony. In the marine system, there is perfect harmony. You know why? Because luckily humans don't live underwater. And there is total disharmony outside because inhabited by humans. Because humans alone have been endowed with this power called will, individual will. And with this will, we can either harmonize with the organic whole to which we belong, or be in disharmony, every action that we do which is selfish in nature results in disharmony. Every action that we do selflessly results in contributing to the harmony. So therefore, karma yoga is in a way harmonious actions which contribute to the harmony of this universe. That is why Krishna talks of karma yoga at multiple levels. In his exposition on karma yoga, Krishna talks about karma yoga as ajna. He then talks about karma yoga as yajna. Then he talks about karma yoga for prajna. And then he also talks about karma yoga for the sarvajna. So if we have to remember the principle of karma yoga, we have to remember these 4 parts that Krishna talks about. The 3rd chapter can be divided into 4 parts. Karma yoga as ajna, karma yoga as yajna, karma yoga for prajna, karma yoga for sarvajna. Now, what is karma yoga as ajna? Ajna means command. Right at the beginning, Krishna is very clear. Hey Arjuna, karma yoga is what is prescribed to you. You cannot escape doing your duties. So therefore, it is my ajna. It is Bhagavan's command. Duty, we must engage. There is no escaping the fact. This is the first part of karma yoga. Then, by teaching the principle of yajna, yajnarthat karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha, it teaches how karma yoga has to be performed as yajna. Yajna is sacrificing short-term want for long-term gain. Very simple formula. Sacrificing short-term want for long-term gain. Any action that we do, when this is based on this principle, it becomes karma yoga. And yajna also is to harmonize with the whole to which we belong. You know, we all belong to different wholes, WHOLE wholes. You know, we belong to this whole called a family. A family is a whole. Then you extend it. You know, people around, then multiple families coming together. The society is a whole. The nation is a whole. The universe is a whole. This Brahmanda is a whole. Krishna, the Paramatma, is a whole. We can keep expanding with our perspective expanding. Through the Gita, as we move through the Gita, our perspective of who we belong to keeps also expanding. So when yajna is about harmonizing with the whole to which we belong to. That is why Krishna says, for the sake of harmony to exist in this universe, one needs to necessarily perform. He says, even great kings, karmanaivahi samsiddhim astita janakadayaha loka sangrahamevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. Krishna says, even great kings like Janaka, who was a great jnani, he could have renounced his kingdom and he could have done tapas. He could have been just sitting in the Himalayas blissfully meditating on his own, but he also performed karma yoga. Incidentally, Krishna takes very few examples in the Gita, real personalities. It seems during Ramavatara, Mother Sita was very upset. Rama always Atmanam Manusham Manye Dasharatatmajam, always Dasharatha. I am son of Dasharatha. Dasharatha is so very, very pop. Dasharatha is the best king. Dasharatha is the emperor. Dasharatha, he used to celebrate Dasharatha. It seems Sita Mata was very upset. You always talk only about your father and you forget your father-in-law. Very unfair. At least one word. You've spoken 100 words about your father. One word for your father-in-law. No. Rama. Very, very. Purushottama is like Maryada Purushottama. No, if I speak about my father-in-law, people will think something. I know it's not. I cannot. Customs say I should only speak about the father. No. Sita Mata is very upset. So Bhagavan remembers this. So when it comes to Krishna Avatara, he said, no. Now I have to ensure that I please the mother, and says, Lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. Karmanye. So who is that? Janakadeyaha. He gives the example. Now, the Lokamata is also pleased. Finally, is accepted. When it comes to giving the right example, yes, not Dasharatha. Now, Janaka. Now, Bhagavan says, see, when it comes to talking something superior, I'm talking about my father-in-law. He's very, very happy. So it's a very important lesson for all of us here. Even if we talk less, talk the right things. Yadyada charati sreshtaha tattadeveda janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanuvartate. Krishna gives a leadership lesson. No, there are several leadership lessons that are taught in today's world. No, the foundation for any leadership lesson is the Gita. There is nothing in the Gita that today anybody can claim. That is why I keep saying there is nothing new to be invented. We only need to discover. There is no new wisdom to be invented. Any wisdom for any walk of life, for any sphere, for any domain is there in the Gita. Yadyada charati sreshtaha tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokas tadanuvartate. He talks about, hey Arjuna, all the more reason why you should practice Karma Yoga. Hey Arjuna, there are hundreds of people who are looking at you. If you are a leader cannot say, just if somebody announces I am a leader, people will not follow. People will not follow. People will not follow just because somebody announces that he or she is a leader. People will follow someone who sets the right example. We need not announce that we have become leaders. We will realize we have become leaders when there are followers automatically following us. And when will anyone follow? Only when they see us. Walk the talk. Practice what is preached in the Shastras. Show by example. Krishna therefore says, Arjuna, you are Arjuna, the valiant Kshatriya. If you do not lead by example, how do you expect anybody else to follow? Therefore, yadyada charati sreshtaha, sreshta. Anyone who is sreshta, anyone who aspires to be a leader needs to first follow. And therefore, this is where he establishes how important it is for Karma Yoga. Now, Karma Yoga as Agnya, Karma Yoga as Yajna has been explained. Now, what is Karma Yoga for Prajna? What is Prajna? Prajna means mind. Karma Yoga for Pavitra Prajna, let's say, for a pure mind. So if we need to purify our mind, we cannot say, I will stop performing actions to purify my mind. Krishna says, no, that is impossible. It is only through performing actions. Engage with the world. The world may be dirty. We can still engage with the world, which is dirty, but still can in the process purify our minds. This is how powerful Karma Yoga is. And one of the principles of ensuring that we purify ourselves when we perform every action is the principle of akartritva, non-doership. No, this principle of non-doership, akartritva, will keep coming throughout the Gita. It starts in the third chapter where Krishna says, hey Arjuna, when you perform any action, do the action by ascribing the agency of action to the gunas of Prakriti, he says. Essentially, then immediately we may ask, are we doers or non-doers? Yes, we are doers, but we are not the sole doers, because the Atman is housed in the body. Now, depending on the nature of the body, the nature of the actions change. Animals do different kinds of actions. Every species does different kinds of actions. Therefore, the Atman, the nature of the Atman in every living entity is the same. The nature of the Atman in the snake is the same. The nature of same as the nature of the Atman in the lion. A lion roars, a snake bites. The nature of the action is different. So therefore, even we look at the human beings, even though all of us are human beings, the nature of the actions that we do seem to be very, very different. There is something which is influencing the nature of our actions. What is that? Krishna explains first. The nature of actions depend on the nature of the body. That is why different living species do different actions. Humans don't go around biting people just like snakes. When we are children, maybe we bite. That's a different story. But as we grow up, we all know we should stop biting. Similarly, everyone, depending on their own nature, the quality, unique qualities that they have in their mind, the quality of their actions also seem to change. Krishna says it is because of the three gunas of Prakriti, Arjuna. Our physical body is made up of three gunas. Our mental body, the mind, is made up of three gunas. Our buddhi, the intelligence, is influenced by three gunas. We are all products of three gunas, and therefore the nature of our actions also change depending on the mix of these three gunas. That is why he says, Tattva-vittu mahabaho guna karma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartante iti matva na sajjate. Arjuna, you must realize that it is gunas which are interacting with gunas, and you have to cultivate the practice of being a witness, he says. Gunas interacting with gunas. This body is made of gunas. The senses are made of gunas. The world around is made of gunas. Guna guneshu vartante. To understand this, a simple analogy can be used. We all experience this. We go inside a movie theater, sit, and then for the next 3 hours, we are so immersed. We are so attached to what we are seeing. Suddenly, we start identifying with the characters there, right? We identify with one character, the character laughs, we laugh. The character cries, we cry. Somebody attacks the character, we are shuddering. We identify, and then lights switch on, and suddenly we realize that we have nothing to do with the characters on the screen. Similarly, Krishna says, this world is an interaction between the gunas and the gunas. The gunas that make up the indriyas, the gunas that make up this body, and the gunas that make up every other object around. Guna guneshu vartante. The moment we see that, then we know that all this activity that is happening, we only play a small part. So therefore, he says, ascribe kartrutva to the gunas of Prakriti. And when you do that, you also will control your ego, he says. Otherwise, our egos will always only go in one direction. The radius of our ego, consider the ego as a circle. When we are little children, the radius of the ego is small. So as we grow every year, exponentially the radius increases. It keeps bloating, it becomes so big it consumes us. The only way to control the growth of this radius of the circle of ego is to ascribe our actions. So consider that I am not the sole doer. I may be a part doer but not a sole doer, which means that also will keep reminding us that I am also not the sole determinant of every result of my action. If the moment I realize that I am not the determinant of the result of my every action, then I will also be prepared to accept the result as it unfolds without being shaken. I will not jump up when it is good and jump down when it is bad. Why? I know that I am only a contributor, one of the various factors that determines the result. So this kartrutva to be ascribed to the gunas, guna guneshu vartante. Krishna gives that. So therefore, karma yoga for pavitra prajna, for purifying the mind, which means controlling my ego. Egotism needs to be controlled. I keep telling myself that I am not the center. I am not the center of this world. We all operate in our own worlds, where we are at the very center. We think the world is revolving around us. We think the world is revolving around us. That self-importance grows to such an extent that it consumes us so much. And we cannot accept the reality that forget about we being in the center, we are not even in the periphery. So this attributing kartrutva to the gunas, which starts in the 3rd chapter, will continue through several chapters, where this akartrutva anusandhana is such a very, very important principle. It's difficult to digest, no doubt, but the journey starts in the 3rd chapter. And then the 4th teaching of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga for Sarvagya. Karma Yoga as Agnya. Karma Yoga as Yajna. Karma Yoga for Pavitra Prajna. Karma Yoga for Sarvagya. Who's Sarvagya? Krishna. The one, the omniscient one who knows all. What is Karma Yoga for Krishna? Gives principles of how to do right actions. A very, very important, one of the anchor shlokas in the Gita. There are several beautiful shlokas in the Gita. Every shloka is beautiful, no doubt. But sometimes we also need to pick some shlokas to keep contemplating on. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamo bhutva yudyasva vikatajvaraha. This is one of the anchor shlokas where Krishna is talking about how we can practice, how can we lead our life and living as karmanishtas, as karma yogis, wherever we are. All of us can proudly call ourselves as yogis, karma yogis. When we practice, when we put into practice the principles, simple principles that Krishna is laying down for us. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamaha bhutva yudhyasya vigatajvaraha. 5 principles he is talking about. The first principle is Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya, which means Krishna is saying, hey Arjuna, offer everything that you do, all the actions to me. Offer all the actions to Krishna. Sometimes we think, why Krishna is saying this? Krishna eventually will recommend that successful life and living is to offer our hearts to Krishna. But it is not easy. It doesn't come easy. To offer our heart to Krishna is not easy. So Krishna prepares us for the pathway to offer our heart. He says, if you cannot offer your heart to me, at least offer what is in it to me. Start there. So what is in it? What is in our hearts? What is in our hearts? The work that we do and the results that we want. That is there in our heart. This is what we are thinking constantly. So he says, offer that to me first. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya. Everything that we do and the results, acknowledge Krishna's role in that. And offer the same. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya. Adhyatma chetasa. Principle number 2. Adhyatma chetasa. What is the reference point for every action that we do? We need to constantly keep asking ourselves. This questioning ourselves is so very important for us. Sometimes we may hesitate. Sometimes it can be very uncomfortable for us. But we have to question ourselves. Reflect on some of the actions that we have done through the day. What was the reference point of those actions? Was it the ego? Or was it our true self, our own Atma? All our actions have the ego as the reference point. Adhyatma chetasa. Always keep telling us that we are distinct and different from the body, which is what we learned in the 2nd chapter, Sankhya Yoga. We are much, much beyond. Our nature is so very different. The body is subject to changes. We are changeless. That when the reference point is the Atman, then every action that we do, the outer reward will become a byproduct. Inner growth becomes the main goal. The outer reward is a byproduct. I don't need to necessarily worry too much about the outer reward. The outer reward will come. Outer success will come as long as I focus on my inner growth, inner contentment, inner peace, equanimity of the mind. When my mind becomes equanimous, when I am content within, outer reward will follow. So, adhyatma chetasa. This is the second principle. Mayi sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa. Nirashihi. This is the third principle. Ashihi, nirashihi. Expectation of results, expectation of rewards. Manage those expectations. Because everything that we do with some expectations. And it is because of the expectations that we get frustrated most of the time. Nirasihi, manage those expectations. Reduce those expectations. Detach from the result. Learn to move on. Accept the result as it unfolds and learn to move on. Rejoice, celebrate if the result is good, but move on. No, this is nirasi, nirmamaha. This attitude, this mamaha means mindness, which is emotional dependence on everything. We all have desperate wants. We all want, there's a long list. If we really have to analyze things, we have needs, we have wants, and we have desperate wants. Actually, the focus should be on the needs and maybe some wants, but our focus is always on the desperate wants. Transform desperate wants into wants, eventually to preferences, so that we don't become slaves to those wants. Nirmamo bhutva. Yudhyasya means here is asking to fight. So engage in your duty. Vigata jvaraha. Jvara, anxiety. Vigata jvaraha. Without any anxiety. Without any anxiety, you have to perform every action without the feverishness of anxiety. We are all told, the affirmations to practice, to remain, without any anxiety, right? All is well, all is well. There's a movie also, all is well, don't worry, everything will be well. These affirmations will work to some extent, but they still don't address the root. There was this man who was in the supermarket. He was walking in the supermarket and he saw a mother with a child, little child, in an aisle walking by, and this aisle was filled with cookies, and this little child was looking at the cookies and throwing tantrums, jumping up and down, whining and crying, saying, I want cookies, I want cookies. And the mother is saying, relax, Lakshmi, relax, just 5 more minutes, relax, Lakshmi. Then moves on to the next aisle. Aisle is filled with cookies. This child is, I want cookies, jumping up and down. This man is watching, and the mother is saying, relax, Lakshmi, relax, Lakshmi. And then they go to the checkout. About the checkout, this little child looks at all the goodies. There's in the checkout also there are all goodies. This child is jumping up and down. Mother is continuing, another 1 more minute before I finish. Relax, Lakshmi, relax. And they walk out. This man is very curious. He goes, wow, you've managed your child beautifully. Very patiently you're asking her to relax. This little Lakshmi. Mother looks around and says, who's this little Lakshmi? I am Lakshmi. This all is well, relax, relax is a mantra, no doubt, but Krishna says that alone is not going to make us free from the feverishness of anxiousness. Vigata jvaraha. Unless we address the root cause of anxiety, which is our misidentification. As long as this misidentification prevails, we will continue to be anxious all the time, because the changes are always going to happen. The body is always going to change, and every change is going to make us anxious. Only when we realize that we are changeless by nature, we cannot control our anxiety. So Krishna, through this, gives a very important set of guidelines, principles to practice karma yoga. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyadhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamaha bhutva yudhyasya vigatajvaraha. After this, he concludes the 3rd chapter by talking about why we are unable to realize that we are the Atman and not the body. Because Arjuna immediately asks, what is that which is coming in way of our knowledge and the actions that we do? Why don't we easily realize that we are the Atman? Krishna says, hey Arjuna, you must realize that the Atman within is covered by 3 layers. And it's like a light bulb is covered by 3 layers of blankets, each layer thicker than the other. And unless you uncover these layers, you will not be able to realize your own true nature. The layer of restlessness, the layer of impurities, the layer of ignorance, which cloud the mind. And Krishna says only when we start uncovering, unclouding the mind and go beyond these layers of restlessness, layers of impurities, and layers of ignorance, we can get to taste the nature of our own Atman. We can get to realize the nature of our own Atman. And for that, we need to get our hierarchy right. Hey Arjuna, know that unless you get your hierarchy right, what is the hierarchy? Indriyas at the bottom, the sense organs at the bottom, the body on the top, the mind on top, buddhi, intelligence on top, and on top of that is the Atman. Whereas the way we operate in our life and living is with the hierarchy upside down. The Indriyas run riot. The mind doesn't know what to do. Completely driven by the Indriyas, buddhi is completely clouded, and therefore we are lost. Krishna says the first and foremost is to try to reverse the order of hierarchy. We all know this. To bring some organization, some structure, we need to get the hierarchy right. So Krishna concludes the third chapter by saying, hey Arjuna, you have to get your hierarchy right, and you have to start looking at the various layers that cloud your mind. And only when you uncover these layers and start to experience your own true nature and start to be situated with reference to who you are, your true identity, and rooted in the knowledge of your true identity, when you start performing right actions based on the principles of Karma Yoga, then every action that you do will become a liberating action. This is what transmuting an ordinary action to an extraordinary action, which is Karma Yoga. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanastu.